Have you ever heard of a young settler left behind by her wagon train who manages not only to survive but to reshape her destiny? In this remarkable story, a determined woman without sight braves the darkest corners of an unforgiving wilderness. Along the way, she meets a Cherokee scout who sees in her not a burden, but a person brimming with untapped potential. Together, they face howling storms, prowling beasts, and the looming threat of greed-driven pursuers. It's a journey of resilience, trust, and the power of true friendship that transcends all boundaries. Curious about what happens when courage is the only thing left in your grasp? You won't want to miss a moment of this tale, especially the final showdown that ties everything together in a heart-stopping climax. Listen to the complete story for the full impact, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll support these tales of bravery and hope, and stay connected for many more good stories to come. The year was 1832, a time of perilous frontiers and restless ambitions. In a raw expanse near the rugged passes of the Great Smoky Divide, hope and dread both took root with unrelenting force. Here begins the tale of Cora Halwell, a young woman rendered sightless by a ruthless fever, and Daniel Two Rivers, a scout of Cherokee descent who often walked the boundary where two worlds collided. Though strangers, their destinies converged when Cora's traveling party abandoned her amid a battering storm. Orphaned and vulnerable in a treacherous wilderness, she confronted the specter of a lonely death, until an unexpected hand reached out to save her. The wagon caravan had departed weeks earlier from the eastern settlements, aiming for a rumored new settlement far beyond the Great Smoky Divide. Each day's journey was more arduous than the last. Swollen creeks that threatened to wash out wheels, winding trails fraught with boulders, and a perpetual shortage of fresh water. Many travelers were sour-tempered after weeks of hardship. Mason Larimore, the caravan master, shouted orders with rigid finality. He'd promised they would reach a safer outpost, but the weather seemed bent on thwarting him at every bend in the trail. Cora, seated near the rear of the last wagon, was distinctly aware of the tension. Voices carried forward on wind currents, laced with snide murmurs about that blind girl. Her cousin's husband, Emmett Alder, had once pretended pity for her. He'd claimed that after the tragic passing of her parents, he would see her safely west. Yet from the moment they sold her small inheritance to fund their wagon and supplies, he'd made no secret of his resentment. Cora's presence had become an unwanted obligation. Through glimpses of overheard arguments, she realized he had no intention of continuing to support her once they reached their destination. The day's travel ended abruptly by a creek suspiciously higher than usual. While wagons jostled for better ground, Miriam Alder, Emmett's wife and Cora's cousin, complained about dwindling water rations. "It's not my fault," Cora responded, a note of weariness fraying her typically calm tone. But Miriam brushed off the explanation. "Somebody's taking more than they should," she snapped, stalking away in a swish of dusty skirts. Cora swallowed her retort, forcing herself to remain composed. Their words didn't wound her so much as reaffirm her sense of isolation. She caressed the edges of a small canvas bundle, her few possessions, a second dress, an old comb, her deceased father's watch that no longer ticked, and a Braille Bible left by her mother. Each item a thread tying her to a life that felt impossibly far away. By late afternoon, the sky darkened ominously. A wind keened through the trees, harbinger of a storm. The caravan's pace picked up, but overhead thunder rumbled in disapproval. When the rain began, it was no gentle shower, but a punishing deluge. Horses snorted in terror, and wagons lurched through thickening mud. Cora, sensing the shift in temperature and hearing the frantic calls of men, understood that a truly violent storm had arrived. Mason Larimore bellowed about finding higher ground and lashing down supplies, yet chaos prevailed. Rivers of water rolled under wagon wheels. Children screamed. Amid the mayhem, Cora hunched in her corner, waiting for Emmett or Miriam to guide her to safety. They never came. The storm's intensity transformed the creek into a foaming torrent. Rain pummeled the wagons, seeping through every gap. At first, Cora simply held tight, trusting that someone, anyone, would return to help her down. But as time elongated, the caravan effectively scattering, a dreadful realization spread through her like poison. They had left her behind. The voices, the crack of whips urging panicked horses, even the shrill wails of frightened children receded under the roar of the downpour. No one called her name. No comforting arm reached in. She was alone. With trembling determination, she eased toward the wagon's edge, her hands searching for any stable handhold. Rain attacked her face in cold sheets. Suddenly, the side panel creaked, and strong fingers gripped her wrist. "Get out of there!" a voice hissed. "Emmett's!" He yanked her forward so roughly that she nearly lost her footing in the mud. Her meager bundle of belongings was clutched tight against her chest. "Come on!" he shouted against the thunder. "Wagon's about to flood." His tone was sharp, more irritated than concerned. In that deafening swirl, Emmett dragged Cora up a slick incline. They stumbled in the sludge, battered by wind and hail like rain. A flash of lightning split the darkness, letting her fleetingly see silhouettes of trees at impossible angles. The next moment, thunder hammered the valley, vibrating through the saturated earth. Her heart pounded as though it too might be carried away by the unstoppable current of water. Emmett's grip dug painfully into her arm, but she did not protest. She needed him, or so she believed. Yet just when she imagined they might reach the others, he shoved her against the trunk of a thick oak. "Stay put," he commanded. "I'll help Mason with the horses. Don't budge." His footsteps vanished before she could even ask where Miriam was, or plead for a blanket. At first she clung to hope. He'd return. He must. But as the minutes bled into an hour, marked by her chattering teeth and the slow ebb of adrenaline, no one came back. Rain eventually slowed, the thunder echoing more distantly. Only the hiss of wind in drenched foliage and the trickle of runoff through the underbrush reached her ears. She ventured a hesitant call. "Emmett? Miriam? Mason?" No response. She repeated their names, louder. The forest gave her no answer but the steady drip of water from leaf to leaf. Then the horrifying truth clutched at her. She'd been discarded. Cora slid down the oak's trunk, sodden dress clinging to every inch of her skin, muscles raw from exhaustion. She thought she would cry, but found only numbness. Blind, alone in unknown terrain, the rational part of her said she was doomed. She fingered the edges of her bundle, feeling the shape of the pocket watch inside, momentarily comforted by that tie to the life she once had. Another part of her whispered, "At least the suffering is almost over." She sank deeper into the muddy ground, listening to the fading storm as if it were a final lullaby. A faint calm stole over her. That calm was shattered by footsteps. Soft, measured, neither frantic nor heedless. More akin to a predator's silent approach than a settler's clumsy rush. Fear spiked through Cora's veins. Could it be a wolf or a scavenging bandit? She forced herself not to bolt. Then a voice emerged from the darkness, deep but controlled. "Why do you sit alone in the rain, woman with clouded eyes?" She caught her breath, turning her face toward the unseen speaker. They left me," she managed, hoping this newcomer bore no malice. The voice paused, then spoke again, stating with quiet gravity, "Night creeps cold. You will perish here." Cora bowed her head. "I know." Yet a tiny spark of hope flared that perhaps this stranger would not let her die. The footsteps drew closer. In the humid night air, she detected the faint smell of smoke and leather. Then he spoke a second time. "You wish to live? Yes?" The question, direct and unadorned, made her swallow. Yes," she whispered, raw honesty slicing through her despair. "I've no desire to perish in these woods." A rustle of movement told her he was crouching beside her. "I am called Daniel Two Rivers by the men who trade with my people. Among my own, I am no Kesti, quiet fox. I can guide you from this place if you choose." She felt the warmth of his proximity, marveling at how quickly an impossible situation had shifted. Suspicion warred with gratitude. She recalled warnings from other settlers about wild Indians, but her limited interactions suggested such tales were rarely fair or accurate. In her predicament, she couldn't afford to indulge fear. "Yes," she said at last, "please guide me." Daniel instructed her to stand, his tone calm but firm. Weary and stiff, she rose shakily. He placed one hand gently on her upper arm. Unlike Emmett's bruising grip, Daniel's hold conveyed the sense that he was merely lending her support, not dragging her anywhere. "We walk carefully," he said. "The flood changed the land tonight." Your caravan is gone, but my shelter is near. Move when I move. If you slip, I will catch you." And so they proceeded, weaving through dripping foliage, Cora's heart thrumming with a mixture of relief and dread. Daniel's footsteps were so light she sometimes feared she'd lost him entirely, but then she'd feel the subtle pull on her arm, guiding her around a hidden root or a treacherous slope. When her foot snagged on a fallen branch, he paused, let her feel its shape, and gently directed her to step over. The storm's aftermath created channels of mud and piled debris. Once, she almost tumbled into a newly formed gully. Daniel caught her by the elbow, steadied her, then pressed on without a word. A question formed in her mind. "Were you watching the caravan?" She voiced it in a near whisper, mindful of the hush that had settled after the storm. His answer drifted forward. "I watch all who traverse these lands. The Cherokee have reason to be vigilant of strangers. Most caravans are too large, too skittish to approach. But I saw they left one behind." She felt a pang at the matter-of-fact mention. Her worst suspicion now confirmed. They had simply chosen not to reclaim her. At length, the gurgle of a swollen stream grew louder. "We cross here," Daniel announced. "I'll carry you. Stones are slick, and your eyes will not help you on them." Before she could protest, he lifted her in one smooth motion, one arm under her knees, the other around her back. Instinctively, she clasped her arms around his neck. Heat flushed her cheeks, but she said nothing, grateful for his confidence in that crossing. Water splashed around his calves. The current tugged, but his balance never wavered. Once on the other bank, he set her down gently. "We go higher now," he said. Cora realized how thoroughly she depended on Daniel's instruction. Even her sense of direction had faltered during the storm. Soon the ground sloped steeply upward, and the night air turned cooler. He guided her for another quarter of an hour until, at last, they reached a shallow cave. She heard him scrape flint, then the welcome crackle of a small fire sprang to life, casting warmth upon her face. "Sit," Daniel said. "You must remove wet clothing or risk fever. A fur blanket rests to your left." With trembling hands, she found the pelt. She swallowed anxieties about modesty. Survival came first. Morning arrived, pale light filtering into the cave, accompanied by rustling birds and the drip of water from soaked rock ledges. Cora stirred on a mat of woven grass, her mind laced with confusion. The memory returned. The storm, the abandonment, the mysterious Cherokee scout who saved her. She sat up, the rabbit fur wrap slipping off her shoulders. Her clothes lay neatly folded to one side, mostly dried. Nearby, Daniel's voice announced itself. "Your garments are ready." She thanked him softly, concealing her discomfort with the situation. The dryness of her throat reminded her how little she'd drunk the previous day. "There is water," he said, as though reading her thoughts. A carved wooden cup nudged her hand, sloshing with cold liquid. She gulped it gratefully, reacquainting herself with the simple blessing of hydration. "I am in your debt," she said after a beat. "I have no means to repay your kindness." His response was calm, almost indifferent. "Kindness is a choice, not a debt. My people do not leave behind those who can be helped." She found she didn't question it. Her experiences so far contradicted every rumor of savage hostility she'd heard as a child. Once fully dressed, improvising as she did with limited sight, she discovered him tidying the cave. He stoked the embers of last night's fire, then placed a bit of leftover smoked venison and foraged cattail roots on a flat piece of bark. "Eat," he instructed. "You will need strength." As she nibbled, questions bombarded her mind. What happens next? Where will I go? How can I face a settlement alone? She finally mustered the courage to ask, "You've rescued me from certain doom, and I'm grateful. But do you plan to escort me to some outpost? Or perhaps you can point me in the right direction? I have little to trade." Silence stretched. She sensed Daniel choosing his words. "We are two people caught between worlds," he began slowly. "You cannot easily return to your caravan. They do not seek you. The nearest settlement is days away. You have no means and perhaps no welcome there. My own people, some would find your presence difficult." He paused, letting that truth sink in. "If you wish, I can lead you to Cumberland Crossing, though it may not be the haven you hope." Her thoughts whirled. The memory of William's harsh dismissals, Miriam's scorn, and the humiliation of being a burden lanced her pride. She thought of the uncertain future, a blind woman with no family or funds, reliant on the grudging charity of strangers in a settlement that may or may not exist. Or, Daniel continued, you can remain here for a while, learn the land, gather strength, then decide. The offer astonished her. She swallowed a surge of emotion. But why would you do so much for me? A long moment passed. He said softly, when my grandmother went blind, no one cast her out. She contributed wisdom the rest of us lacked. She guided us in ways beyond mere eyesight. The white settler ways, his voice briefly tightened, often do not see value in that, but we do. A torrent of emotion welled in Cora. Gratitude, relief, a faint trace of hope. She realized in that instant that choosing to stay was the only option that didn't lead her to more humiliation or potential death. I'll stay, she managed, voice almost trembling. At least until I can figure out who I am in this new life. Daniel's tone carried quiet approval. Then we begin now. First lesson, this cave is your anchor. You must know each corner as if it were your old family room. Thus began days that stretched into a pattern Cora would never have imagined when she still possessed her sight and a home. Each morning she arose to Daniel's gentle urging, typically as the embers of their fire smoldered. He'd hand her a small bowl of boiled grains or dried meats, explaining that the Cherokee placed great value on early productivity. Then they tackled lessons. He showed her how to count paces from the cave mouth to the fire pit, how to detect the difference between a rocky ledge and mere piled debris by tapping her walking stick. She traced the coarse cave walls, memorizing corners and nooks until she could move around with minimal hesitation. It's not enough to avoid tripping, Daniel said one afternoon. You must sense the world itself. Hear the water change its pitch when traveling over rocks. Smell which plants are near. Feel the tree bark ridges to know species. Over time, her initial awkwardness shrank. She even discovered that the forest was not simply one big mass, but a collection of nuanced environments. The pine stand that murmured softly in mild wind, the oak grove whose branches snapped louder, the stream's path shifting whenever rains fell. She used her staff in slow arcs, following Daniel's footsteps carefully, and found that she was more capable than she'd been allowed to believe. On the fifth day, a mild rain trapped them mostly in the cave, leading to an unexpected confrontation with her sense of self-worth. Daniel was working on chipping arrowheads from flint, the faint scraping echoing in the cave. Cora, at his prompting, attempted weaving a reed mat. After an hour of fumbles, she managed a few inches of rough, uneven weave. It wasn't pretty, yet it was something she'd made. A small surge of pride warmed her. Back home, she said softly, they let me do almost nothing. My cousin said I should stay out of the way. I was decorative, except I wasn't even that once my eyes gave out. Thank you for trusting that I can learn. He merely nodded. We survive by doing. Blindness means adaptation, not surrender. Another day, while practicing step counting near the cave's perimeter, she felt an abrupt shift in Daniel's demeanor. He'd grown tense, scanning the woods. Rainwater dripped off the overhang. A storm bigger than this one lurks, he'd murmured. She realized he spoke not only of the weather, but also of the possibility that her old caravan or settlers might be near. That ephemeral worry stirred anxiety in her. Might they come searching for her? Or were they content to let her vanish? When a thunderous night arrived, accompanied by the approach of a hungry mountain lion, all illusions of safety in this new life were stripped away. The beast sought refuge in the same cave, its growling rumble sending chills down Cora's spine. She crouched behind Daniel, who stood poised, blade in hand. Tense minutes ticked by, the animal's presence suffusing the air with primal threat. In a furious moment of snarls and quicksilver movement, Daniel dispatched it, suffering a ragged clawing to his arm. The cat lay dead. Its tawny fur soon turned into a pelt they'd utilize for warmth and tools, each part honored in a manner foreign to her old settler ways. As she helped wash and bind Daniel's wounds, Cora experienced a role reversal. For once, he was the one in need. She marveled that in this wilderness, a blind woman could tend the injuries of the man who had rescued her. We saved each other, he said, gently correcting her thanks. From that point forward, a subdued closeness anchored them, bridging the gulf between her outsider status and his stoic independence. Not long after that harrowing night, Daniel decided they must travel beyond the cave. "Winter is nigh," he said, "and we can't remain hidden here forever. You must learn the terrain around us." Although the idea frightened Cora, she understood the necessity. So they began an extended exploration in wider circles, forging paths across hillsides, stream beds, and small clearings. Daniel taught her to identify edible mushrooms by running her fingers across velvety caps, to sense a ravine's approach from subtle echoes bouncing off her staff, and to map entire sections of forest through repeated passes. She discovered her sense of hearing became sharper with each day, discerning bird calls that signaled dawn from those that cried at dusk. "You must also sense what cannot be heard," Daniel instructed one frosty morning. He guided her onto a sunlit rock ledge. "Close your eyes, pardon me," he said, self-correcting. "That is, let your mind calm. Breathe. Feel how the wind shifts around these stones. The forest speaks if you let it." She took in a slow breath, focusing on the chill biting her skin, the swirl of air over rocky ground, the birds adjusting their calls in response. Time drifted, unmeasured. Then Daniel stiffened, cautioning her. "Another presence approaches. Birds near the ridgeline have gone quiet." Moments later, 4 travelers emerged from the west, apparently directed by different motivations. Daniel quickly steered her back to the cave, well hidden until they passed. "You see now," he murmured, "or rather, you perceive. The land warns us. Men do not travel lightly in such wilderness." Cora's progress thrilled her. She recognized she was no longer the helpless passenger on a wagon. She missed her old life less each day, even if she sometimes wondered how her distant cousin might be faring. Wondering, but not longing. The present day, however, brought news that threatened her fragile sense of peace. Daniel returned one evening with a solemn expression. "My people, the village from which I come, have heard rumors of a white woman in Cherokee land," he admitted. "They will send watchers. They worry about the presence of soldiers near the frontier. Word has likely spread that you were abandoned, but might be sought again by those with an agenda." When he mentioned that soldiers had arrived at a trading post not far from Cumberland Crossing, Cora's heart twinged with unease. Why search for me now? The only reason that came to mind was the land she had inherited, rumored to hold valuable resources. Daniel added carefully, "My people will want to see for themselves who you are. Some might question why I harbor you. They might suspect trouble. We should go meet them, not wait for them to find us." The dread in her stomach coiled tighter, for she understood her welcome among the Cherokee was not guaranteed. Still, the alternative was returning to a settler population that had betrayed her. She resolved to face whatever came next head-on. They departed the cave at dawn, Daniel leading her along a winding trail that scaled ridges and descended ravines. In short order, they encountered a small group from his village, an elder woman named Suyi, a younger warrior called Dekanawita, and a tracker known as Hawina. The meeting took place with few words at first as they sized Cora up through a combination of curiosity and caution. Eventually, Daniel stepped forward to speak in Cherokee. Suyi, her voice elderly yet commanding, responded, sometimes in halting English. "We wonder about this blind one. You hold her. You keep her alive. Why?" Over a communal meal, Daniel and Cora answered queries. She offered stilted explanations, telling them how she ended up alone, how Daniel's kindness gave her a chance to live. Suyi listened intently. Dekanawita was less convinced, muttering about soldiers' footprints and the risk Cora's presence might pose. In the end, they decided to escort her to the village for a gathering of the elders. The journey to the village spanned a perilous 2-day march. Suyi's party insisted they avoid main routes, suspecting foreign scouts might watch for them. Cora found her newly honed navigation skills tested on rugged slopes, skirting gullies, and crossing half-frozen streams. She clung more tightly to her walking stick than ever, grateful for its reliability. Evening campfires were minimal, mere smoldering coals to avoid detection. The group rarely spoke above whispers. A hush of tension lay upon them, as if unseen watchers lurked in the silent woods. Often Cora drifted to sleep with visions of distant footfalls or wolves. Yet each morning she awakened unscathed, forging onward with renewed resolve. At the end of the second day, they arrived at a threshold. Cora heard the shift in the forest's acoustics, voices echoing, a subdued undercurrent of communal life. This was the Winter Sun Village, Daniel's home. The air, tinged with wood smoke and curing hides, enveloped her senses. A wave of unfamiliar jitters set her heart racing. She clutched Daniel's arm, swallowing down intimidation. "They'll judge me," she whispered. "I am an outsider, blind, from a people who have broken treaties." A gentle squeeze on her hand. "Yes, they will judge. But judge fairly if we are honest. Let your spirit stand tall." The clang of a ceremonial drum thrummed in her chest. Children giggled, scurrying around, only to grow hushed at the sight of the unusual newcomer. Murmurs of curiosity arose in the local tongue, words she couldn't decode. Yet she felt no overt aggression, only caution. Daniel guided her toward the largest structure, presumably a council house. Inside, the air was warm with the smell of burning pine. Her footsteps padded over woven mats. Although she could not see them, she sensed many presences focusing on her. Voices conversed in Cherokee, some old, some middle-aged. Occasionally, Daniel murmured translations in her ear. The chief, Gosagwa, spoke with measured gravity, asking who she was and why Daniel sheltered her. Daniel recounted everything: her abandonment, her resourcefulness in the forest, her new grasp of survival. Then came pointed questions from the elders about the rumored soldiers looking for a missing blind settler. Suyi added her knowledge of fresh tracks leading north, possibly a military patrol. Cora had never felt so vulnerable. Instead of an audience of two, like in the cave, she now faced a full council. She waited, eventually leaning toward Daniel to whisper, "May I address them?" In response, Gosagwa beckoned, shifting to halting English. "Speak, woman who does not see with eyes." Her throat dried, but she summoned the courage. "Honorable Chief, gracious elders, my name is Cora Hallwell. I lost my sight to fever. I come before you because your scout found me left for dead in a storm. He saved me. I have learned more about living since meeting him than in all my previous years. I mean no harm. I only seek a place where I can exist without being cast aside." The hush that followed stretched taut. Then Suya responded in gently accented English. "We face trouble from soldiers. They claim they search for a helpless settler, yet we suspect deeper motives. If we harbor you, will they bring punishment?" A flurry of Cherokee ensued. Daniel translated the gist. Some worry that letting her stay might provoke hostilities. Others argue the tribe's values demand compassion. Gosagwa weighed the debate, then announced a provisional decision. She might remain under watch for 7 days. After that, the council would reevaluate. A swirl of relief and lingering anxiety coursed through Cora. Where would she go if they turned her out? Suyi escorted Cora to a modest lodge belonging to Alawe, an herbalist, and her daughter Gisela. This arrangement, she learned, was to ensure Cora gained skills that might prove her not a burden. Early each dawn, Alawe guided her through tasks like shelling corn, mixing ground herbs for poultices, and weaving baskets. Gisela showed a shy fascination, asking how Cora navigated without seeing. In exchange, Cora offered insight into her own methods, counting footsteps, labeling objects by shape and smell, distinguishing individuals by voice. In the evenings, Daniel visited, updating her on new developments. "Soldiers track near the perimeter," he said one night, voice low. "They question other villages, offering coin for any rumor of you." She shuddered, recalling Emmett's hateful face and how easily he parted with her. "Why such desperation to reclaim me?" Daniel paused. "The elders suspect there's more to your family's land than you realize. Possibly gold, or farmland others want to exploit. Men kill for less." She clenched her fists, feeling the complexity of a world she could barely see, yet now recognized as fraught with greed. During these intervals, she also sensed a personal shift. Daniel's presence had become a lodestar in her day. He made no grand romantic gestures, but a quiet trust grew between them. She recalled the gentle confidence in his voice each time he corrected her hand movements or reminded her to feel the forest, not fight it. There were glimpses in his tone that suggested a mutual closeness, though she wasn't certain. He, too, remained an outsider in his people's eyes, a scout who dwelled in both settler and Cherokee realms, but found full acceptance in neither. Amid these challenges, Cora found new purpose. She embraced chores, shared knowledge, and demonstrated daily that blindness did not equal helplessness. Yet the undercurrent of looming conflict spiked when a runner arrived from the outlying fields. Soldiers had been spotted, accompanied by a man in fine clothes who claimed to represent a wealthy Virginia land interest. No name was given, but Cora guessed it was Edwin Blackgate, the new name for Edward Blackwood. Fear coiled in her belly. Could that banker have a deeper motive than mere courtesy? A quick council meeting ensued. Gosagwa and Sui debated whether to hide Cora again or meet the threat openly. Daniel insisted knowledge trumped secrecy. We must learn what these men truly want. Sui then addressed Cora directly. Child, if you remain, we risk suspicion from a larger force. If you go, you risk death at their hands. We cannot decide for you. Gathering her courage, Cora said, I'll stand with you. I will not be used as a pawn to put your people in danger. But if I hide forever, they'll keep searching, and suspicion may still fall on you. Her calm determination impressed them. The final decision, a meeting on neutral ground, accompanied by selected warriors and the elder Suyi, who carried spiritual authority. They set out at dawn, the sharp chill of approaching winter in the wind. Cora wore hand-sewn moccasins gifted by Alawe for the rocky trek. Daniel led her carefully through a winding ravine, joined by two other tribe members, Nahuka and Ganalo, both skilled with bows. Together they reached a wide clearing where soldiers waited. Cora's heart thudded. She recalled the uncanny hush of the forest that accompanied a predator's presence. This time, however, the predator might be wearing a polished uniform. A man stepped forward, accompanied by four armed soldiers. Though Cora could not see his face, she recognized his self-important tone. Dear Ms. Hallwell, he announced in a polished accent, thank the heavens we've located you. She gripped her staff harder, forcing her features into calm. This must be Edwin Blackgate. His stride across the clearing spoke of confidence or arrogance. She recalled family meetings where he'd sweet-talked her parents with promises of managing finances, only to eventually counsel them into precarious deals. She never liked him, even as a child. Suyi, standing beside Daniel, let her grave voice resonate. Speak your purpose. This woman is here by choice. Blackgate gave a charade of a bow. I represent a Virginia banking trust. This poor lady's family estate was entrusted to me. When we discovered her missing, we simply had to launch a search. We cannot let her suffer. Please return with us, Ms. Howell. We have accommodations and the best physicians. Cora forced a scoff. Is that so, Mr. Blackgate? Where was your concern when my cousin and his wife cast me aside? Why this sudden rescue mission? He paused only a fraction, then replied, We had no knowledge of your maltreatment. The details only reached me after your disappearance. You own valuable holdings. The bank regrets any confusion. She nearly spat. Valuable indeed. Possibly harboring gold. Yes, you're quite determined to keep me silent or else control me for your advantage. Which is it? A ripple of reaction from the soldiers, uncertain glances. Blackgate's mouth tightened. You've been misinformed by these hosts of yours. A hush fell as Daniel stepped forward. We do not abandon the helpless, he said curtly, but she is not helpless. She stands with us. If your interest is genuine, why come with armed men? One soldier barked, We act under official orders. The Cherokee cannot hold a settler woman captive. Immediately, Suyi demanded, She is no captive. She remains by her will. If you doubt, ask her plainly. The soldier flicked uncertain eyes between them. Is that true, Ms. Hallwell? Are you not coerced to stay? Cora steadied her breathing. I was left for dead. The Cherokee saved me. They have taught me to live with dignity, in ways my own kin never did. I have no intention of returning to a house built on betrayal. A flicker of fury crossed Blackgate's features. He snipped. This is unwise. If you think you can roam free among them, you risk an armed confrontation. Are you responsible for that blood, Ms. Howell? The threat was thinly veiled. Outrage seethed in Cora's mind. She recognized how he manipulated guilt, implying that her new friends would be the ones to suffer. Unexpectedly, Suyi spoke in halting English. We do not fear your soldier threats. Our hearts carry truth. Your words carry greed. The edges of Blackgate's veneer cracked. I see conversation is pointless. Ms. Howell, I'll make it plain. If you fail to return, certain legal claims will declare you incompetent, handing control of your estate to others. Is that your wish? Cora's heart hammered. He was using the law's prejudice against her blindness to strong-arm compliance. Before she could formulate a response, Suyi raised her staff. Go, she said, voice unwavering. Return to your forts. We will not yield to your intimidation. Blackgate exhaled in frustration. This is not finished. I carry the backing of powerful interests. You will regret spurning my proposition. He snapped his fingers at the soldiers, who shifted uncertainly, then followed him out of the clearing. Their departure did not banish the tension, only replaced it with a heavy apprehension. As soon as they left, Cora slumped against Daniel. He'll come again, in force, she said. They aim to claim my land I never wanted to exploit. But now sea must be leveraged carefully to protect my new home. Daniel placed a supportive hand on her shoulder, acknowledging the weight of that realization. Upon returning to the village, the elders convened late into the night, deciding how to handle Blackgate's threatened escalation. Cora, seated beside Daniel, answered their questions about her father's property, the suspicious dealings, and her cousin's complicity. She explained how the bank had orchestrated quick sales, and how rumors of precious metals had swirled back when she still had partial sight. The question loomed. Could they gather proof to block Blackgate's claim, thus removing the impetus for a soldier-led incursion? Sui announced quietly. Only someone who straddles both worlds can uncover truth at that land. We do not wish to send many Cherokee. They'd be branded trespassers. Yet, if Ms. Howell alone attempted it, Daniel finished her thought. She would be at the mercy of men like Blackgate. A hush deepened. Suyi looked to Daniel. He nodded, acknowledging the silent request. I shall go, he said, voice laced with acceptance of a difficult mission. I've traveled settler roads, speak enough of their language. I can slip in, verify the mining, and bring back evidence. Cora's stomach twisted at the prospect of him leaving. He had become her rock, her compass. But she saw no alternative. She heard him say, While I am gone, you stay with the people, learn more, earn trust. If I succeed, we can force a legal matter that halts Blackgate. Gusagwa gave an approving gesture. Yet Cora realized with sudden clarity how much she would miss Daniel. His presence was more than a guide. It was the first time she felt truly seen since losing her sight. At dawn, villagers gathered to watch Daniel prepare. He carried only essential supplies, traveling light for speed. Cora swallowed the lump in her throat as he bade her farewell. She pressed her mother's old Braille Bible into his hands. Take this, so you'll remember the promise to return, she whispered, her voice shaking. In return, he gave her a small stone carving, a fox with outstretched ears, symbolizing the skill of deep listening. Keep your spirit open, he said gently. I will come back. She nodded, forcing a resolute composure that cracked only after he vanished beyond the village palisade, flanked by 2 scouts who would guide him part of the way. Days stretched interminably, each passing night gnawing at Cora's nerves. Winter's first flurries arrived early, blanketing the village in quiet whiteness. The routine of chores and training continued, though the spiritual emptiness of Daniel's absence weighed on her. She honed her weaving under Alawi's tutelage, ground herbs for winter ailments, practiced defensive stances with Nahuka, all to keep her mind busy. She also formed closer bonds with Suyi, who regaled her with Cherokee stories about star spirits, animal guides, and ancient prophecies. On the 10th day, the sky cast a cold, brilliant sun on a crystalline dawn, but no word from Daniel. On the 16th, a rumor arrived that soldiers patrolled the old roads more aggressively. Anxiety soared. What if Daniel had been caught or ambushed? Finally, on the 18th dawn, a breathless runner sprinted into the village, shouting that Daniel Two Rivers approached from the west, accompanied by an outsider. Villagers flocked to the gates, hearts pounding. Cora felt them gather, and her own chest tightened. She clutched the carved fox. Moments later, Daniel's distinctive footsteps rang out, carrying the scent of pine and long travel. She exhaled a shaky breath of gratitude. He'd returned. A second man spoke in refined speech. An acquaintance of Cora's father's old lawyer, apparently. He greeted her politely, explaining he'd come to help file a formal inquiry about the illegal mine. They had evidence, Daniel said, gathered from secret visits to the property. Enough, they believed, to force territorial authorities to intervene. Relief coursed through Cora, yet the threat was not gone. Blackgate's men might retaliate or bring more soldiers if they discovered Daniel's infiltration. The elders decided swiftly. Cora and Daniel would present their evidence at the nearest seat of lawful authority, thereby disarming the immediate threat of rescuing a blind settler. If the courts validated her claims, Blackgate's entire operation could be seized or halted. Though the journey would be harrowing, it was a path out of limbo. That very afternoon, after tearful farewells, Cora set forth with Daniel and a small Cherokee escort to help keep them safe along the route. Their objective? To prove that a blind woman abandoned by her kin could yet fight for justice, not only to preserve her rightful land, but to protect the village that had embraced her. And as she walked, staff tapping over the snowy earth, the carved fox in her pocket, she felt the echoes of Daniel's teachings guiding her steps. She was no longer the helpless traveler in a wagon. She was a bridge between her old world and the new, carrying her blindness not as a shameful burden, but as part of her strength. Looking back on this extraordinary journey, I see it as a celebration of human spirit, of a woman who refused to be defined by her blindness and a scout who bridged cultural divides with quiet grace. Yes, there were trials, storms that threatened to wash everything away, a menacing pack of wolves, and the relentless approach of those driven by greed. But each challenge revealed a deeper truth. Solidarity can blossom where fear once ruled. Now that the story concludes, I can't help but feel uplifted by the power of true connection. Even in the harshest lands, people can unite, forging paths toward belonging and redemption. I believe we all have our own mountains to climb and lessons to learn. Let's keep discussing the inspiring qualities of these characters. What resonated with you? Did any moment stand out as a turning point? Share your thoughts below, and thank you for journeying with us. If you haven't yet, please subscribe for more stories that remind us how resilience and hope triumph against the odds. Your voice matters, and we can't wait to hear your insights.